What if I told you that somewhere in the world there are people whose smart cards are part of a security system protecting one of the most important pieces of the internet? And what makes this even stranger is that the story is often told as 7 people can turn off the internet. But that headline is not actually true. There are no 7 people who can simply press a button and shut down the internet. In fact, ICANN itself has explicitly said that the so-called keys to the internet do not control whether the internet functions or not. They belong to one very specific system called DNSSEC, which helps protect the domain name system, the system that translates names such as google.com into the network information computers need to find online services. But once you understand what these keys actually protect, the real story becomes much more interesting. Imagine you type a website name into your browser. Your computer doesn't magically know where that site lives. It has to ask the domain name system for information, and DNS is organized hierarchically, beginning at what is called the root zone. DNSSEC adds cryptographic signatures to this hierarchy so that a validating resolver can check that DNS data is authentic and hasn't been altered in transit. At the very top of that security chain is the root key signing key, or KSK, which acts as a trust anchor for DNSSEC, and this is where the famous 7 people story begins. The root KSK is protected using extremely strict procedures involving hardware security modules, or HSMs, specialized devices designed to protect cryptographic keys and perform sensitive cryptographic operations. The system is deliberately designed so that no single person possesses everything required to activate the protected key material. There are actually 2 sets of 7 crypto officers associated with the 2 geographically separate key management facilities, one on the US East Coast and one on the West Coast. Each set is assigned to its facility. Under the current DNSSEC practice statement, activating an HSM requires 3 out of 7 crypto officers to be present and provide their physical keys, along with several additional security controls. So even the famous 7 people number is already incomplete. There aren't simply 7 people sitting in a vault with one master key. There are 2 groups of 7 crypto officers, plus another group involved in disaster recovery. And those recovery people are where the story gets even stranger. IANA also uses recovery key shareholders, or RKSHs. These are trusted members of the wider internet technical community who hold separate pieces of the material needed to reconstruct backups of the protected key. According to IANA's current practice statement, reconstruction of the storage master key requires 5 out of 7 recovery key shareholders. Their credentials are geographically distributed, and their job is specifically about recovery in the event of a catastrophe, not routine internet operation. So if you have ever seen the headline, 7 people hold the keys to the internet, what you're actually seeing is a simplified version of a much more complicated security architecture. And the reason the system is designed this way is simple. Never let one person become a single point of failure. Think about the alternative. If one individual held the complete secret needed to control the root DNS trust anchor, that person's smart card could become one of the most valuable pieces of digital security material on Earth. Steal it, compromise it, blackmail them, or simply wait for them to make a mistake, and an attacker could potentially get far closer to the most sensitive part of the DNSSEC chain. Splitting responsibility makes that dramatically harder. No single person can activate the system by themselves. Even the threshold itself is designed around groups. 3 of 7 crypto officers are needed for certain activation steps, while 5 of 7 recovery key shareholders are needed for a particular disaster recovery reconstruction process. And this isn't some theoretical system that was designed once and then forgotten. IANA regularly conducts formal root KSK ceremonies to perform operations involving the root key signing key. These ceremonies are documented, audited, broadcast publicly, and carried out under detailed procedures. The ceremonies generally happen 4 times a year, and a typical ceremony uses the KSK to sign the operational zone signing keys, or ZSKs, that are then used to sign the DNS root zone for the coming period. In other words, the famous locked room isn't the place where someone goes when they want to turn off the internet. It's part of a carefully controlled process for maintaining the cryptographic trust chain used to authenticate DNS data. And that distinction matters because the internet is not one giant machine sitting behind one door. The internet is a huge collection of independently operated networks, data centers, routers, cables, satellites, servers, companies, governments, universities, and millions of devices. There isn't a single power switch that 7 people can reach. Even ICANN has directly warned that describing these people as controlling the internet is incorrect. So what would actually happen if the people involved in this key system somehow lost access to their credentials? This is where the story becomes much more subtle. The cryptographic root matters enormously for DNSSEC validation, but losing access to it would not instantly make every website disappear from the internet. Existing DNS information would not suddenly be erased from every server on Earth. The problem would instead be the ability to maintain, update, or recover the cryptographic chain that DNSSEC aware systems use to validate future root zone changes. In a serious catastrophe, the recovery mechanisms would matter precisely because the system was designed to survive the loss of individual people or pieces of hardware. IANA's current procedures include geographically separated facilities, backup HSMs, backup key material, and threshold-based recovery processes. And there is another fascinating detail that most people never hear about. The system has been designed so these high-security operations can be observed. IANA publishes ceremony materials including scripts, audit logs, photographs, and recordings, and the ceremonies themselves are broadcast online. The current IANA schedule, for example, lists Root KSK Ceremony 62 for August 12, 2026, with the objective of signing the zone signing keys for the fourth quarter of 2026. Think about that for a second. One of the most sensitive cryptographic operations in the global internet infrastructure is carried out through a process that outsiders can actually watch. That's not because security doesn't matter. It's because the security model is built around transparency, procedural controls, separation of duties, independent witnesses, and auditability, rather than simply asking the world to trust a handful of secretive individuals. IANA's Trusted Community Representative Program exists specifically to bring independent members of the technical internet community into these processes. The original program selected representatives from different countries, and roles include crypto officers and recovery key shareholders. And the choice of people matters too. These aren't random individuals selected because they were famous online. Trusted community representatives are chosen under defined eligibility requirements and must be able to perform their assigned roles reliably, including maintaining the credentials and travel readiness required for ceremonies or emergencies. There is also a deeper reason to distribute these roles around the world. Imagine storing every backup in one building in one city. A fire, flood, earthquake, political crisis, or other disaster could compromise the whole system. So the architecture deliberately spreads critical components across geographically separate facilities and geographically distributed trusted individuals. The goal isn't to make the system dramatic, it's to remove single points of failure, and the hardware itself is fascinating. Hardware security modules are tamper-resistant cryptographic devices designed to protect sensitive keys and prevent unauthorized extraction or use. The root zone KSK isn't just sitting on a USB stick that someone can plug into a laptop. The procedures around the HSMs involve multiple security layers, physical controls, trusted roles, and threshold activation requirements. This is why the popular image of 7 people with 7 keys who can shut down the internet is so misleading. The real system is much less cinematic and much more intelligent. There are multiple groups, there are multiple facilities, there are separate cryptographic roles, there are backup mechanisms, there are audits, there are procedures for replacement and recovery, and there are technical systems around the world that continue operating independently. So what can these keys actually do? They are involved in protecting the DNSSEC root trust anchor. The root KSK is used to sign key sets, including the operational keys used for the root zone, allowing DNSSEC-aware resolvers to validate the authenticity of DNS data. If an attacker somehow gained the ability to misuse the root trust anchor, the potential consequences for DNSSEC validation could be severe. That's exactly why the security procedures are so extreme. But severe consequences for DNSSEC security are not the same thing as an ability to switch off every internet connection on Earth. That's the key distinction the viral headline leaves out. The internet is decentralized. The DNS root is critical, but it is one component of a much larger system. The cryptographic keys secure a specific function rather than providing a master control panel for the entire network. And there is one more thing that makes the story even more interesting. These root keys themselves can be changed. ICANN is planning a major root zone KSK rollover in October 2026, replacing the existing trust anchor with a new one as part of normal long-term DNSSEC security maintenance. The goal is to maintain strong cryptographic protection rather than to preserve one permanent key forever. In fact, the history of these ceremonies shows how routine the process has become. IANA has conducted dozens of root KSK ceremonies since DNSSEC was introduced in the root zone, with operations ranging from signing quarterly zone signing keys to introducing backup hardware, replacing trusted personnel, generating new KSKs, and destroying retired cryptographic hardware. So if someone tells you 7 people can turn off the internet, the best answer isn't simply yes or no. The accurate answer is much more fascinating. There are multiple groups of trusted people whose credentials form part of a sophisticated cryptographic recovery and key management system. Those people protect one of the most important trust anchors in internet infrastructure. But they do not possess a secret red button that disconnects the world. They can't simply switch off your Wi-Fi, shut down websites, disable your phone network, or cut every cable running across the oceans. What they are helping protect is something quieter: the ability of DNSSEC-aware systems to trust the cryptographic chain that begins at the root of the DNS. And maybe that's why the real story is better than the myth. The internet doesn't survive because 7 people are powerful enough to control it. It survives because no single person is powerful enough to control it. The locks, the smart cards, the ceremonies, the separate facilities, the thresholds, the backups, and the independent witnesses all exist for the same reason. If something goes wrong, the system should keep working without depending on one human being. So the next time you hear that 7 people hold the keys to the internet, remember the part the headline leaves out. There aren't 7 people who can turn the internet off. There is something much more impressive: a global system designed so that even the people trusted to protect one of its most important cryptographic foundations don't get to control it alone.